The people, the people who have been running Syria for the last 50 years are called Alawite Muslims. They lie somewhere towards Sunni Muslims. There are two main denominations, Sunni and Shiite. And the Alawites are a minority closer to Sunni. And Iran is Shiite. So what we've got for the last how many years, Iran, the Shiites, plus their supported troublemakers, Hezbollah, more Shiites, have been trying to oust the Assad regime, who are Alawites closer to Sunnis. And it started with the Arab Spring, when the rest of the stupid world had the idea, you see, there are people, there are Arabs that want freedom, see? And only people like us understood Arab Spring is going to be the same as the Arab fall, as the Arab summer and the Arab winter. It's all the same dreck. And as a result, part of the Arab Spring, as you all know, rapidly freedom and independence, all that stopped. And instead, the Muslim Brotherhood took over Egypt, which Obama welcomed. If you remember, Obama welcomed the fall of Mubarak and welcomed the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, which of course are cutthroats. And then, thank God, there was an internal revolt within Egypt where al-Sisi, who's no Messiah, he's not so good either. But compared to ISIS, he's wonderful. So that's Egypt. And then up in Syria, part of the Arab Spring, Iran and Hezbollah started making war in defense of Assad as ISIS came to life to take down Assad. And so Assad was supported by Iran and Hezbollah. And that's what kept ISIS at bay. Now, you don't like ISIS, but you don't like Assad. You know how bad this guy was? I'm going to pause a moment. How many civilians of his do you think he massacred in order to hold power in the last few years? Just think. Don't say it out loud. Just think. Rabbi just asked me to think, to guess how many of his own civilians he killed in order to hold power. Ding, 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 time up. 500,000. He killed 500,000 Syrian citizens of his in order to hold power, right? The whole world's based on that phony 40,000 number. They tear down campuses about Israel and Gaza. 500,000. The International Court of Justice never held a hearing. International Criminal Court never held a hearing. Security Council, did you hear anything they did? 500,000 Arabs he killed. So what happened? Israel just dealt with Iran and Hezbollah. We've been following it every Sunday. Suddenly, Hezbollah's entire leadership and the Radwan force and all of their weapons and they had to excuse themselves from Assad. We're basically in the process of all being killed. We can't come and continue bolstering your defense. Hezbollah out. Iran, the Israelis just took out all of our aerial defenses, the SAM-300 sites, and 80% of our ballistic missiles and ballistic missile manufacturing capability. Currently, we can't send you any money and we can't send you any people. We're too busy trying to rebuild, if we can, what they destroyed. And we only have like 6 weeks, because then when Trump comes, it's going to get worse for Iran. And so as soon as ISIS determined that no one's there to support him anymore, he had one more backer, Russia, Putin. But Putin's a little bit tied up in Ukraine. So no one has money to spare, no one has weapons to spare, and no one has men to spare. ISIS took advantage, realizing that they've got 6 weeks before America has a president. Right now, there's a vacuum. You have Kamala Harris in Hawaii, or wherever the hell she is. You have Biden, who knows where he is, and they decided no one's there, no one's watching the chicken coop. And in 1 week, they conquered Aleppo, Hama, Homs, and Damascus in 1 week, just as happened in Afghanistan at the beginning of Biden's presidency. Takes 1 week for a country under a tight-fisted dictator completely to disappear and fall. And so the good news is that Assad and his entire dynasty, who made Six-Day War in 1967, 1973 Yom Kippur War, they're gone. And they're gone for good. Some even are now looking into whether he was shot down. He flew out just as the terrorists were coming into Damascus. He caught an emergency flight with his family to get out. And some are now looking, there's a theory he may have been shot down. Or they don't know where he went, possibly to Russia, possibly to Iran. We'll find out by next Sunday. And now there's a new government forming. But it's not Simcha per se. The politicians in Israel are spinning it like it's great. And it's great to have Assad out. But now you have ISIS, and we don't know what that means. For the first phase, it'll be nice and peaceful. ISIS will be busy taking control of the area, taking control of the government, and just getting themselves embedded. So for a few weeks or months, there'll be no trouble. Then the question is, does ISIS want to make war with Israel? In which case, I think they won't want to do it during the Trump presidency. They'll let Israel continue wiping out Hezbollah, maybe Iran. We'll see what happens. But I expect that the next time there's a Biden, if Trump loses, if in 4 years the Democrats take it back, you could be sure that that ISIS will start trying to murder Jews. So that's a little bit of a backgrounder. Let's go. And there's a lot of other stuff. That whole program had nothing to do with this. Highlights or lowlights are anti-Semitism now has completely erupted in Australia, which historically has been one of the best, safest places for Jews outside of Israel. Australia historically has been America's single closest ally, side by side with Israel. Australia always voted with Israel, with America in the United Nations. Australia was practically a satellite of the United States, even though it's part of the British Empire. But there was a unique relationship with Australia until they came under a left-wing government a few years ago. And ever since then, they've broken much of their relationship with Israel. They now have a pro forma relationship with Israel, but officially advocate an Arab country in Judea and Samaria. And anti-Semitism has broken out like crazy in Australia. And this past week, the largest synagogue in Australia was burned down. This is a big, big story. So there's that. And then on the other side of the dial, and then we're going to get going, some Jewish kid ended up going to Brigham Young University, America's Mormon university in Salt Lake City, Utah, and has emerged as their quarterback of their football team. He's one of only 3 Jews in all of Brigham Young University, BYU. The rest of them are basically Mormons. And he's the only Jew who is the quarterback of a medium to top rated college football team. And he's been getting, ever since he started the game last week or 2-3 weeks ago, he's been getting unbelievable press because Jews take great pride in stuff like that. If you're a Jew and you're a baseball star or a football star, they haven't had since Sid Luckman of the Cleveland Browns and Chicago Bears, half a century and more ago. And the news break just before Shabbat. I couldn't find a clip. I found a little something. A Jewish quarterback who's getting a lot of attention. Get this. He just got his first endorsement. Like you buy a box of Wheaties and they used to have Mr. Bruce Jenner on the box, the Breakfast of Champions, or they would have other athletes, Wheaties. I woke up and had my Wheaties, and he just got his first endorsement. He's on I make this not up. This guy by virtue of being a Jew at Mormontown, just got his first, he's actually on boxes. You can find them in the supermarket. And now you have to ask yourself, Rabbi played an earlier game with me and asked, how many people did Assad kill? So Rabbi's going to do one more. What company put this guy this week on their box? His first endorsement. 3 seconds. 2, 1, ding, ding, ding. The guy is on the box of Manischewitz matzahs. He just got the endorsement of Manischewitz matzahs. You're going to go buy a matzah for Pesach or any time, and you have this Jewish kid who plays football on Shabbos, and as part of his story, he got the call on Yom Kippur, they need him, so he left temple to be on the football field, and he gave this lovely interview. I'm not playing it, about how he never felt more religious than when he was representing the Jewish people playing football at Brigham Young University on Yom Kippur. And that's who's on the matzah box. And he means well. And you know something? It probably is the most Jewish he ever felt. So here we go in the crazy world of being Jewish. This is Rabbi Dov Fischer of Young Israel of Orange County. If you're watching this on YouTube, thank you for watching. Please give us a like. We actually benefit that way, not monetarily, but YouTube moves the programs a little bit more better position on YouTube. So please give us a like. Please consider subscribing. Don't consider it, just do it. And if you really like it, please forward the link to a friend. And if you have someone you really don't like, of course, forward the link to them. So this is what it looks like. Here's Israel. Here's little Israel. It's the center of the universe. It's the land God gave Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And it's the land of the Jewish people and the land of Yerushalayim and the Beit HaMikdash, Jerusalem and the Holy Temple. But size-wise, in this Middle East, and this is just a little piece of the Middle East, is little Israel. Along the coast is Lebanon, with cities like Beirut, and then there's Sidon and Tyre, Sidon and Sur. That's the place it used to be Phoenicia, under King Hiram helped us as an ally build the Beit HaMikdash, sent cedars of Lebanon. Lebanon now, of course, has the center base in the south of Hezbollah that has been severely crushed. And here is Syria. Wow, is that big. Wow, is that big. Compare the size of Lebanon and there's Syria. The rebels, they marched in, took Aleppo, Homs, also Hama, and just took Damascus, Damascus. Name of Damascus is in the Bible. Syria in biblical times was Aram, Arameans. I don't know whether you remember when Gary Johnson was running for president of the United States on a third-party ticket, and he was interviewed on the national news. We're going to interview this presidential candidate. And I don't know whether you remember this, but the reporter asked him, Mr. Johnson, what do you think of Aleppo? Do you remember? And he responded, what's a Aleppo? And they thought he was kidding. Guy had never heard of Syria. He's running for president of the United States because he's been governor of New Mexico, and he's a libertarian. And what do you think of Aleppo? I don't know. What's Aleppo? So that's what we're dealing with. That could have been the president of the United States. What's the president of the United States? So that's Syria. And understand they border with Turkey, and that's Erdogan. So Erdogan is a Sunni Muslim, and he's backing ISIS, who are Sunni Muslims and had been in the back corner of Syria, and Trump pretty much wiped them out. And then under 4 years of Biden, they rebuilt. This is Iraq, the Euphrates River and Tigris River, and Mosul. All green is Iraq. So you've got Turkey, you've got Iraq, you've got Kurds. They don't have a country. What about the right of the Kurdish people to their own land? Well, nobody talks about that. So the Kurds get massacred in Iraq and in Turkey. They're in the worst place in the world for Kurds to be. So Turkey's supporting it, and Erdogan is supporting it as they take over Damascus, putting them, endangering Jordan, which is Sunni. I'm sorry, it's not endangering them. It puts them, but they like to take over land, so it does endanger them. It represents a possible destabilizing circumstance for Iraq. Iran has been sending weapons to Hezbollah in Lebanon via Syria. That's going to completely stop now because Hezbollah are Shiites and the new people are Sunnis. So they won't be letting the Iranian Shiites send Shiite weapons. So Hezbollah is really more up the creek. But Israel now has to deal with a new problem. So the Israeli army, only in the last 24 hours, has expanded their positions in the Golan Heights to all of Mount Hermon, or Hermon, Hermon, Mount Hermon, getting ready for whatever may come from Syria. One more map. This focuses on Syria. Again, you've got Turkey up here, and you've got Mosul in Iraq over here, and you have a little bit of Jordan there, Eretz Israel here, a little bit of Beirut here, and this is where the big mess is right now, on Israel's northeastern border, and right alongside Lebanon. Damascus, Hims, etc., etc. Halab, that's where, Halab, I believe, is Aleppo, if I'm not mistaken. And that's where this, if you've ever met Syrian Jews, they come from here. Syrian Jews are from Aleppo, and they refer to themselves as Halabis. And nowadays they live strong communities in Deal, New Jersey, Deal, New Jersey, along the Jersey Shore, and in Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn. Huge Syrian Jewish communities. And there's a community here in Los Angeles. Hama is the city that Assad dropped chemical weapons on his population and killed 25,000 of his people. That's why he got out of Syria. Okay, here we go. This is just a picture of Gaza, of Israeli troops in Gaza on the way back to Israel, being called back that they don't have to be there to getting a little rest. Here we go.
The Syrian government apparently has fallen after a sudden rebel offensive sprinted into the capital of Damascus. And tonight there are reports that Syrian President Bashar al-Assad has fled the country. The move brings a stunning end to the 50-year rule of the Assad family.
Eyewitness News reporter Leanne Suter joins us live from our newsroom with the latest on this breaking news. Leanne?
Michelle, the rapidly changing events shaking the region, several countries shutting down their borders with Syria as rebels take control of the country. Celebrations in Damascus as crowds topple a statue after a coalition of Islamist rebel groups called HTS sweep across Syria, taking control of the troubled country. The dramatic collapse marks a major shift in the Middle East, ending the...
This is a statue of Hafez al-Assad, the father of the guy they just overthrew, Bashar al-Assad. Keep an eye on the statue. Notice that when they celebrate, they shoot guns in the air. Like when we celebrate, they put on a party hat, you light a birthday thing, you blow out the candles. They set the candles.
The Assad family's decades-long iron-fisted rule over Syria and possible radical change for the country.
What this may do is to herald a new situation in which there is an area in which a unified government is able to control Syria.
President Bashar al-Assad, who's been in control for 24 years, has reportedly fled the country. Syria's prime minister says he's ready to hand over the government to the opposition in a peaceful transition. The White House says President Joe Biden is closely monitoring the situation, and President-elect Donald Trump posting on social media, quote, "The United States should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight." Syrians celebrating across the country, many chanting freedom. Experts say the opposition knew exactly when to strike.
And it understood very well what was going on in terms of the inability of the international community to intervene in Syria as it had in the past.
At this point, it's unclear what the HTS rebel group stands for or what this takeover could mean for Syria. The UN Special Envoy on Syria is calling for urgent talks in Geneva to ensure an orderly political transition. Live in the newsroom, Leanne Suter, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Hello, I'm
It's all over. 54 years of brutal Assad dynasty rule has come to an end. The streets of Damascus have erupted in celebration. President Assad has fled the country and the capital has fallen. Political prisoners have been freed from the country's notorious jails. This appears to show prisoners leaving the Saidnaya military prison. The Syrian army has abandoned its posts. Rebel commanders have warned people not to harm them. Syria's prime minister has stayed in Damascus and has offered the rebels a peaceful transition of power.
This country can be a normal country, a country that builds good relations with its neighbors and with the world without entering into any regional alliances. But we'll leave this matter to any new leadership that will be chosen by the Syrian people. And we're ready to cooperate with any new leadership and facilitate what they need so that various government departments can be transferred smoothly and systematically in a way that preserves the state's facilities.
The rebels only reached the outskirts of Damascus yesterday afternoon. This happened a few miles from the center of the Syrian capital. A statue of Hafez al-Assad, Syria's last leader, was pulled down. The rebels sensed that victory was in their sights, but this has happened more quickly than anyone predicted.
Dear brothers, we are living in the final moments of the liberation of the city of Homs with the permission of Allah Almighty. This is the historic event that will distinguish between truth and falsehood. We advise our brothers in the resistance, as we have previously advised them, to show compassion towards the people. Those who lay down their weapons should be granted safety, and those who flee should not be caught.
Syrian government forces seemed to be fleeing. The military base in Hama was abandoned. And regime soldiers, on the right of this video, are abandoning their posts in Al-Mazah to the west of Damascus. They are seen changing out of their military fatigues into civilian clothing and fading into the population. Every building and town square the rebels take, symbols and images of the regime are being torn down as Syria faces a new and unknown reality. The coming hours and days will be crucial, not just for the future of Syria, but for wider Middle East stability.
This is a historic day for the Middle East. The collapse of the Assad regime, the tyranny in Damascus, offers great opportunity, but also is fraught with significant dangers. This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters, It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its oppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats. One of them is the collapse of the Separation of Forces Agreement from 1974 between Israel and Syria. This agreement held for 50 years. Last night it collapsed. The Syrian army abandoned its positions. We gave the Israeli army the order to take over these positions to ensure that no hostile force embeds itself right next to the border of Israel. This is a temporary defensive position until a suitable arrangement is found. Equally, we send a hand of peace to all those beyond our border in Syria, to the Druze, to the Kurds, to the Christians, and to the Muslims who want to live in peace with Israel. We're going to follow events very carefully. If we can establish neighborly relations and a peaceful relations with the new forces emerging in Syria, that's our desire. But if we do not, we'll do whatever it takes to defend the state of Israel and the border of Israel.
Syrian rebels captured the key city of Hama yesterday. They're quickly closing on President Bashar al-Assad and the capital, Damascus. Retired four-star General Jack Keane joins me now. All right, General, if the Assad regime falls, and it's looking pretty shaky, would that be good news for Israel?
Yeah, overall it certainly would, but there's likely going to be mixed feelings here. First of all, Syria is a client of Iran, and it was into Damascus airport for years that Iran would fly all the rockets and missiles and other munitions that Hezbollah in Lebanon needed. Israel at times would attack those munitions when they were put into warehouses or when they were put into trucks with their fighter aircraft at times. Also, coming out of Iraq from Iran, they would drive literally across the entire Syrian country with munitions, rockets, and missiles also on the ground to get them to the Hezbollah. And that's why the Hezbollah accumulated 130 to 150,000 weapons. And at times, the Syrians tried to establish Hezbollah bases north of Israel, and Israel would attack them with fighter aircraft. So if the Assad regime falls, which itself is a stunning surprise, but if it does happen, that client state, supporting Iran is removed. However, this is a derivative of al-Qaeda that's taken over, radical Islamists. Yeah. They are not moderate opposition forces who want democracy, quite the opposite. And it remains to be seen what kind of mischief they would cause with Israel being right on their border. And the Israelis will watch this like a hawk.
I can't help but think of all the money that has been wasted in recent years. Money for rockets and tunnels and all that, and drones and what have you. Constant fighting, constant warfare throughout the Mideast. All that money's wasted. Could have been used for something good.
No, there's no doubt about it. If you go back to 1948, after the UN helped establish the state of Israel and bring it all forward, the amount of money and suffering through many, many decades is truly horrific. All over one central issue, the existence of the state of Israel.
That's it. That's it. On Wednesday, Ukraine's ambassador met with J.D. Vance and Trump's national security advisor, Pick. Always a pleasure. We'll see you again soon. Thank you, Jen.
Note number one, it just said, since Israel waged war on Gaza. It was Gaza. It was Hamas that waged war. Israel responded. This is how the big lie spreads all over the world. And note how they blend anti-Semitism. They always politically correct, throw in their Islamophobia, even though there's no Islamophobia of no, and anti-Semitism is rife.
Back to this breaking news out of Melbourne now. Authorities investigating a suspicious fire which has destroyed a synagogue in the city's southeast. Live to Simon Love. He's at the scene for us. So what do authorities know about the cause so far, Simon?
Well, Pete, police have deemed this fire suspicious. At around 20 past 4 a.m, emergency crews were called here to the corner of Oak Avenue and Glen Ira Road. Now, this is the Adass Israel synagogue. It is a fixture of the community here in Ripon Lea, and it is currently a crime scene as the emergency crews mop up the scene. You can see that the windows, the glass windows, have been broken in, and there are police also investigating reports that someone came to this premises and set fire, poured petrol and set fire out the front. Now, that is a preliminary report that is still being investigated. So police still treating this as suspicious. They've confirmed that 2 people inside were injured, but with non-life-threatening injuries. We have heard from Fire Rescue Victoria crews here at the scene.
أنا اسمي آية أحمد عبد الله سعيد البنا، مدرسة بنات مخيمة الكرم.
تتعلمي في المدرسة إشي عن حق العودة؟
حق المقدم ونرجع على بلادنا وهيك.
اوكي، الأساسي في المدرسة عن إسرائيل.
إنه نطخهم.
طب أنت بتكره اليهود؟
كتير.
ليش؟
لأنهم هم أذونا وهيك وإحنا ناخذ حقنا منهم.
شو رأيك في الهجوم على إسرائيل في 7 أكتوبر والحرب اللي صارت بعديها؟ هل هذا الإشي مرتبط بحق العودة؟
عشان ناخذ فلسطين وترجع لنا بلادنا.
برأيك الأقصى مجرد رمز؟
لا، مستعد للقتال عشانها.
في مكان لليهود في الأقصى؟
لا.
لليهود الحق في التواجد في فلسطين؟
لا، عشان إلنا فلسطين مش إلهم.
فلسطين بين اليهود وبين فلسطينيين؟
لا، إحنا هاي أرضنا.
طب إيش اللي شو اللي بتحبي تطلع عليه على التلفون أكثر إشي؟
إنه أتفرج على فلسطين والشهداء والمقاومين وحماس.
يعني أنت حابة تشاركي في المقاومة؟ ليش؟
عشان أقاوم وأخذ حقنا من إسرائيل وأصير شهيدة.
شو بتعلمك المدرسة عن السلام؟
بتعلمنا إنه منحبش إسرائيل.
شهداء أبطال؟
أبطال كثير.
طب أنت حابة تكوني شهيدة؟ ليش؟
عشان نطلع عند رب.
מבין כל האמירות חסרות הכיסוי במלחמה הזאת, הנה זו שכבשה בסערה את המקום הראשון.
אנחנו מתים.
Okay, this is on Khan, the PBS or public broadcaster. It's a discussion of what goes on with the so-called humanitarian aid that Biden and others have been pressing Israel to supply to the Arabs in Gaza. So this is the former defense minister who initially said at the outbreak on October 7 that we are going to be imposing a complete siege on Gaza. We're not going to give them electricity. This was October 7 a year ago. Here's our response. We're not going to give them electricity, no food, no water, no energy. But that announcement is turned flip-flop to the opposite completely.
מרהיב, ולמעשה הייתה יריית הפתיחה של מרוץ, לא פחות מזה, של הכנסת סיוע.
Now you're seeing instead the sending in of all this humanitarian aid
הומניטרי לרצועת עזה.
into the Gaza Strip.
באוויר, בים.
We're sending it by sky, by water, by land.
וביבשה.
نحن الآن على متن واحدة من طائرات سلاح الجو الملكي الأردني حيث ستلقى هذه المساعدات الغذائية.
There's a local Arab reporter on their TV saying that we see all this humanitarian aid coming in.
אז למה ישראל מכניסה את הסיוע
So why is Israel even sending in this humanitarian aid?
ההומניטרי היא כל כך לא מעוניינת?
By the way, Channel 11, Kan Chadashot, is a left-wing station. So it's not like this is the right-wing station. In fact, I was surprised in preparing today's class to see that Kan had run this story this way.
מה קורה לו מרגע שהוא חוצה?
So what's going on with humanitarian aid? What happens with it? From the moment that it leaves Israel and crosses the boundary into Gaza.
את הקו לרצועה. הסיוע ההומניטרי, הסיפור האמיתי.
The honest story?
בואו נתחיל.
Come, let's go and see.
מיד אחרי הטבח של 7 באוקטובר,
Immediately after the slaughter on the 7th of October,
ישראל הטילה מצור מוחלט על
Israel initially imposed an absolute siege on Gaza.
עזה. סגרנו את השיבר של המים, הורדנו את
We closed down their water, their electricity,
של החשמל, ולא הכנסנו אפילו ליטר אחד.
and we didn't let them have even 1 liter, L-I-T-E-R, of gasoline.
של דלק. התנתקות 2.0. זה הפסיק כמה שבועות עד שחמאס...
This continued for several weeks until Hamas cried out Gewalt. In other words, that's Gewalt, the Yiddish word, but Israelis use it a bunch when someone complains a lot about something. Oh, he's crying out Gewalt. And this went on until Hamas cried out Gewalt.
בערבית כמובן.
In Arabic, of course. And suddenly,
מדינות ערב עשו רעש בינלאומי
the Arab countries made an international noise, and the American government told Israel
האמריקני הודיעו לישראל שככה אי אפשר להמשיך.
that American government told Israel you can't continue this way. She's yelling, my hands, my hands. So from that moment, Israel folded.
כאן החלה ההתקפלות הישראלית. היא הייתה הדרגתית, בהתחלה אפילו ספרו את הליטרים של כל טנק דלק של...
Initially, Israel was agreeing to let in a little bit, and they would count exactly how much oil they're letting in, gasoline, how many trucks.
דלק לא ייכנס לרצועת עזה. חמאס...
But the spokesman, you've seen him a million times on our Sundays, continued saying, we're not letting energy, gasoline into Gaza. No way, because Hamas needs electricity, needs gas, and we're not going to support and supply Hamas with the fuel that they're going to use against us.
צריך את הדלק לתשתיות המבצעיות שלו, דלק שחמאס גנב מאונר"א, אפשר להחזיר אותו חזרה מחמאס לבתי החולים.
We are not going to give them fuel, like fuel that they've stolen from UNRWA, the United Nations agency. And then the reporter says, and today, you know how much fuel we've sent into Gaza?
אתם יודעים כמה דלק נכנס לרצועה? המון.
A bunch, a whole bunch, complete flip-flop. We said it was a flip-flop, right?
כבר אמרנו, לא?
בלי סיוע הומניטרי,
Remember, Netanyahu originally had said, we're not going to do it.
גם הידידים הטובים ביותר שלנו התקשו לתמוך בנו לאורך זמן.
המהפך הגדול הגיע במהלך הפסקת האש שליוותה את עסקת החטופים לפני שנה. חמאס שהיה לחוץ על כל טיפת דלק, שחרר...
At the first time of the first successful or quasi-successful ceasefire, when Israel got back 150 of the hostages at that time, in return for the release of those 150 hostages, Israel started to agree to weaken the siege and allow supplies through.
חטופים, ובתמורה קיבל אספקה גבוהה. מאז האספקה רק הלכה וגדלה. ומה קורה?
Since then, supplying this assistance got bigger and bigger. And how about now?
היום, לרצועת עזה נכנס סיוע מ5 מעברים. מעבר ארז.
Now Gaza is receiving supplies from 5 different locations. From the Erez crossing, Here's Gaza. This is all Israel. So Gaza has a northern border with Israel, and they have their eastern border with Israel. That's where they crossed into the kibbutzim that they massacred. So there's the Erez crossing.
מעבר זיקים, מעבר 96 ליד בארי, מעבר 147 ליד כיסופים, ומעבר כרם שלום. מעבר...
So these are 5 different entry points through which Israel has been, after having had siege at the beginning, now supplying from every side of Gaza.
פיח ממצרים סגור מהרגע שישראל השתלטה על ציר פילדלפי. ההצלחות של סיוע מהאוויר שראינו בתחילת המלחמה.
On top of it, we've been supplying them from the air. We saw it from the beginning of the war.
כבר לא ממש בשימוש. הניסיון להקים מזח ימי לחופי עזה כשל, וכך נותרנו עם זה שרוב הסיוע ההומניטרי נכנס מישראל.
כשמכניסים אוכל, סיוע, דלק, קמח, מלגזות לאויבים.
This is a protester saying, I'm against this. They're giving them food and water and fuel, and it's crazy.
ככה אי אפשר להכריע מלחמה.
We're never going to end the war this way.
הסיוע היבשתי מגיע...
The reporter saying that the land assistance is coming by truck from Egypt, from Jordan.
ממשאיות ממצרים ומירדן ודרך הים מנמל אשדוד. בסך הכל...
It's all going through the Ashdod port.
נכנסות בכל יום 50 משאיות.
Every single day, 50 truckloads go into northern Gaza.
לצפון הרצועה ובין 100 ל-150.
And between 100 to 150 trucks go in through those other crossings into the center and south of Gaza.
50 משאיות למרכז ולדרום. הסיוע הוא בעיקר מזון, מים.
It's mostly food and water.
ציוד רפואי, תרופות.
Medical supplies and even supplies for winter and energy, gasoline, other forms of energy.
ציוד לחורף ודלק. והמוצר שאותו הכי מנסים להבריח לעזה הוא בכלל סיגריות וטבק.
We're even sending them cigars. And we're sending them like a tabak. I think tabak, I could be wrong. I think it's like some kind of, not exactly marijuana or alcohol, but it's something that has nothing to do with living. It's just for their comfort. These are not even low lechima. This is stuff that's not even got anything to do with war. And now the person is speaking. You know how much a cigarette costs now in Gaza? $20 a cigarette.
אבל מה קורה לסיוע רגע אחרי שהוא נכנס לרצועה?
Well, the reporter says, and what happens? So I've just told you, he says, here's what we're sending in. And what happens after we send it in?
פה מגיע הטוויסט בעלילה, הביזה.
What happens is it gets looted. Primarily in southern Gaza, it gets looted by people and by Hamas.
בעיקר בדרום הרצועה. זה הזמן להכיר פטנט חדש, Made in Gaza, ביזה ברישיון. כלומר...
This is a time to note a unique development, made in Gaza. The idea of just taking and stealing, in other words, international organizations.
ארגונים בינלאומיים שאמורים להכניס את הסיוע ולחלק...
International organizations that supposedly undertake to distribute all this assistance and to give it to the local Gazans.
לחלק אותו לעזתים, משלמים פרוטקשן לבוזזים.
In reality, they pay protection money to Hamas. So they pay protection to Hamas by giving Hamas a certain significant percentage of the food, water, fuel, and medical supplies to the looters, to non-Hamas, but primarily Hamas. They have to pay protection money so they can drive the truck without getting killed.
ונותנים להם 2 משאיות סיוע.
So they give them 2 trucks out of every number of trucks coming in. They give them 2 trucks.
בתמורה, שאר המשאיות ממשיכות עד מחסני המזון.
And in return for the payoff and the and basically, I was going to say blackmail, but basically mafia-style protection money, the rest of them can get through. But these actually are relatively the best things that happen, because it's worse than that.
אבל אלו המקרים הטובים יחסית. במקרים הגרועים יותר...
In the in the less ideal situations, which predominate,
שיירות הסיוע נבזזות על ידי חמאס.
Hamas just goes and seizes the entirety of the supplies.
החמולות, או גם וגם, ורק השאריות מגיעות למחסנים.
And only that which they're unable to loot somehow makes it to the destination points for distribution. And this guy is about to say that the people, the Gazans who live in the camps, have to throw rocks at the trucks, king of the road, have to throw rocks at the trucks, or to beat up the drivers, or to block the drivers as the truck on the road to prevent them from continuing, so they can loot everything before Hamas gets to it.
سواق عشان السواق يقف وتهجم على البضاعة تاخذها وتاكلها. الناس ما هاش تاكل بالمرة.
אז איך קורה שחמאס...
So the reporter asks, so how did this all unfold? That Hamas has just turned this whole thing into
מהשלטון הרשמי?
From basically, originally they had been the official government, now they are the official looters.
לבוזז הרשמי. חשוב להבין שהסיוע ההומניטרי הוא צינור המשאבים היחיד לרצועת עזה כרגע. כדי להמשיך להיות הכוח המרכזי ברצועה, חמאס...
It is important to understand that the so-called humanitarian aid is the lifeline that maintains Hamas in power.
חייב להשתלט.
They could oversee and govern the distribution.
הסיוע אמור להגיע למחסנים של הארגונים הבינלאומיים, אבל...
Now the supplies are supposed to go to distribution centers that are overseen by international agencies, but Hamas instead uses its strong arm, its military arm, its ability to kill people.
חמאס משתמש בכוח הזרוע כדי לדאוג לאנשים שלו. את מה שנותר.
They use their power instead to get their hands on the supplies and loot them to support their fighters. It's a recruiting tool by which they can go to people and say, you're going to die of starvation and thirst. You need food, you need water, join Hamas. Take a rifle and we'll provide for you and your parents and your children, your siblings, if you join and become a Hamas fighter. So these supplies actually are assisting Hamas with recruiting. And then after they've distributed the looted humanitarian assistance to recruit new Hamas fighters, as far as what's left over, they then sell that to the public at extraordinarily inflated prices, with the money going to Hamas to support the continued war effort. So essentially, he's not saying it, but I'm summarizing, basically, this humanitarian assistance over the last year is the reason this war is going on so long, because Israel is supporting Hamas financially and feeding Hamas and assisting with their recruiting. So even after you've killed out all these people, there's a whole new wave of new Hamas people, because that's the ticket to get food and water.
הכסף לכיס. الناس بيحكوا عن نهب البضائع هون.
خشوا عليهم ناس سلاح باخذوا البضاعة يعني مع انه في شيء.
And the reporter is talking to someone who doesn't want to be seen. He doesn't want his face seen on TV. But the guy is basically saying what the reporter has been telling you and what I've been translating. There's guys saying there's no government here. The place is complete anarchy.
حدا في البلد ومواد باخذوا البضاعة وبش بلفوا فيها بسرقوه.
And so Hamas takes all the supplies and there's no one governing here.
הכסף הזה הוא מייצר שליטה אזרחית, הוא משלם לפעילי הזרוע הצבאית שלו.
So with that money, they're able to support citizens that they want. Citizens know that if they want food, supplies, or anything, they have to go to Hamas. That's their life pipeline, and they're able to use it to support their military efforts.
ומגייס פעילים חדשים במקום אלו שנהרגו בקרבות.
And this way they keep recruiting new fighters, new fresh people and blood to replace all the ones that have been killed.
אבל זה לא נגמר שם.
But we're not done yet.
חמאס מרגיש שהציבור בעזה מתחיל לזעום על המחירים.
Whenever Hamas perceives that their inflated prices are so inflated that they're starting to hear people grumbling and threatening. So then they do the following two things.
עושה שני דברים. אחד, הוא נלחם בחמולות של הבוזזים כדי להפוך לרובין הוד של עזה
First, what they do is they become like Robin Hood, and they steal, people are complaining about the prices. They steal, let's say, from the storehouses where the stuff is, and they distribute that for free like Robin Hood. Take from the rich, give to the poor, so to speak.
לקטוף אהבה מהתושבים. שתיים, הוא מארגן הפגנות פייק בשווקים.
And secondly, they organize fake demonstrations. That is, they themselves, when they perceive that the anger in the citizenry is so crazy angry, they call demonstrations to protest the prices, then they lower the prices, and then they eventually raise them back up.
נגד העלאות המחירים של הסוחרים, בעיקר אלו שלא מוכנים לקנות ממנו. הם מתקפלים ומורידים מחירים, וכך חוזר השקט עד הפעם הבאה.
So they control, they make it seem like they of Hamas are the populists who are trying to bring prices down against an unseen force that keeps prices up. In conjunction, they lower prices until everybody calms down a little, and then they shoot the prices back up.
هذا بيحتكر بغلي على الناس، احنا جايين عشانه، جايين بالحديد والنار عشانه، بسرق بينها مشاكل حشيش، جايين عشانه.
And that's an example of a Hamas guy saying, we won't stand for high prices. We're bringing down the prices. And it fools the people, And what happens, the reporter says, when Hamas wants to profit even more, they set fire to the storehouses, supply and demand, and that increases demand, increases price. It increases demand, reduces supply, increases price.
פשוט שורף את המחסנים, מייצר מחסור מכוון, והמחירים בשווקים פשוט עושים את שלהם.
And meanwhile, she's saying they bring from the supermarket that Hamas goes into the supermarket and holds up and steals out of the supermarket things that cost 20, and then they sell it for 80.
האם חמאס יכול להמשיך להתנהל ככה?
The reporter says, can Hamas keep this up? The answer is yes.
התשובה היא כן, לעוד הרבה זמן. הוא הגוף החזק.
And they can do it for a long, long time. They are the strongest body in Gaza. I emphasize again, this sounds like maybe it would sound like a more right-wing station like Channel 14 complaining about the humanitarian aid. It's even the left-wing realizing this is ridiculous. It's the way that we saw in the recent presidential election, many people who might have been in favor of illegal immigration a few years ago have now gotten to the point of saying it's too much, it's out of control. So even Israeli left-wingers, anti-Netanyahu, to put pressure on Netanyahu to get rid of him, even they were claiming, he's not doing enough, even they're sick of it. Because the wars can't end if you keep feeding them and helping them recruit.
כל עוד אין שם גוף שלטוני אחר. והאם ישראל חייבת להמשיך ולהכניס את הסיוע? גם כאן התשובה היא כן.
So the guy says there's no other governing source in Gaza. And then the guy says, is there any alternative leadership out there? Are they going to be the only leaders in town? And he says, unfortunately, yes, only they.
לישראל אין ברירה, כי אוכלוסייה אזרחית רעבה זה הסנטימנט הכי רגיש בקהילה הבינלאומית.
The problem Israel faces is that the people are hungry, and it's such an international cause célèbre that they're stuck with it.
אותה צריכה ישראל לרצות כדי לא לקבל החלטה מועצת הביטחון.
Because Israel doesn't want to become victimized by more severe Security Council resolutions in the UN and by foreign governments embargoing their weapons.
על הפסקת המלחמה, או כדי שתחמושת מחול תמשיך להגיע לכאן. לסיכום, יש פתרון רע ויש פתרון רע יותר.
So Israel's choice is between a bad solution and a worse solution.
זו הרע יותר, תחליטו אתם.
And he concludes by saying, so Israel's choice is between a bad solution and a worse solution. Supplying this humanitarian aid or stop supplying it. And he says, which choice is worse? I don't know, you decide. Hopefully when Trump comes in, he's not the Messiah, but hopefully Trump and he'll get information from Mike Huckabee as the ambassador of what's going on, and between Rubio and Sir, I don't know who the defense secretary will end up. Hegseth is an incredible supporter of Israel. If Hegseth makes it through, you'll have an incredible supporter of Israel in the Defense Department telling Trump that this is working against the strategic needs. If it's someone besides Hegseth, hopefully, like they're talking about DeSantis, if it were DeSantis, he's incredibly pro-Israel. You never know who's going to end up. And this guy, Kash Patel, is very pro-Israel. You've got a lot of incredibly pro-Israel. So there may be a significant change in 6 weeks. But under Biden, Harris, it's just been a disaster. And the biggest mistake, this is from me, not from that guy, I think I've come to realize the biggest mistake that Hamas made is they waited till October 7, 2023. If they were smart, they would have attacked 2 years earlier. And with 2 more years of Biden and Harris, they would have had enough time. God forbid. It's actually a miracle from God that they attacked in a time, in a way that Israel would be able to get to this point and just be able to eke 60 more days and get it to Trump.
מטר לתוך רצועת עזה.
There isn't any genocide in Gaza.
And this is Trump's new advisor on I've lost track of the names of all of the appointments, but Sebastian Gorka is going to be an advisor on intelligence and security matters. And so here we go.
There isn't any genocide in Gaza. There is no such thing as Palestine. Do you know what the etymology of the word Palestinian is? It was a name invented by the Roman Empire.
תכירו את המנהל הבכיר החדש והחריף לענייני לוחמה בטרור של ממשל טראמפ, דוקטור...
So the reporter from Channel 14 says, here we are, we're introducing you to the new director of intelligence or whatever, Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Sebastian Gorka.
Dr. Gorka, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you for having me.
גורקה קודם בידי טראמפ בקדנציה הראשונה מאיש תקשורת ומפזר קונספירציות, כפי שהגדירו.
Gorka was involved with Trump in the first Trump administration.
לתפקיד של אסטרטג לביטחון לאומי.
Talking about him being involved in international strategy, and it was always one of his main issues always has been illegal immigration and America's southern border.
היה בעיקר תומך נלהב לאיסור הכניסה לארצות הברית שהטיל טראמפ על תושבי מספר מדינות מוסלמיות. היחסים בין גורקה לטראמפ טובים מאוד.
Trump and Gorka are good together. They have a good relationship. So the reporter says, I met him in 2015. It's 9 years ago.
I've met him first back in 2015. We met in Trump Tower. We connected instantly. My relationship is one of great respect for a man who has literally taken a bullet for the American people.
בראשית השבוע שמענו על האיום של הנשיא טראמפ על חמאס, שבו...
This past week we heard Trump's threat to Hamas that if they don't let out the hostages, there will be hell to pay.
הוא אומר שבמידה והחטופים לא יחזרו עד מועד השבעתו, התוצאות יהיו חמורות. וזה מה שיש לגורקה לומר על כך.
We asked Gorka, what do you say about that? And he says...
What he'll say is he will stand shoulder to shoulder with the people of Israel and Prime Minister Netanyahu to make sure that the threats to that nation and to Judeo-Christian civilization are destroyed.
לגורקה יש תשובה ברורה לאלו שטוענים שישראל מבצעת רצח עם.
Now we have a new totalitarian ideology to replace Nazism, and that's global jihadism. So if anybody says Israel is committing genocide, they're on the side of the real genocidal jihadis.
שאלתי אותו מה הוא חושב על הפסקת האש בלבנון.
I asked him, what do you think about the ceasefire with Hezbollah in Lebanon?
והאם תושבי הצפון יוכלו לחזור לבתיהם?
You have to degrade their capacity to do harm to your citizens, and you have to undermine their will to hurt your citizens. With the recent pager operation, Israel has done an incredible job of undermining the capacity of groups like Hezbollah and Hamas and the global jihadi movement to hurt their citizens. Additionally, you have to undermine their will to do so as well. Israel has to neutralize every threat to the people of Israel. Period. End of story.
בעניין הקמת מדינה פלסטינית, לדוקטור גורקה יש עמדה נחרצת על מי צריך לשלוט ברצועת עזה וביהודה ושומרון.
If you read the recent polls since October the 7th, more than 70% of the population agree with the massacre of Jews on October the 7th. Until the people of Gaza and the West Bank decide they want to live in peace with Israel and do not want to kill every Jew, until that time, there is no political resolution, and Israel has to be responsible for the security of those territories.
ואיך ניצחון מוחלט ייראה בעיניו?
Well, there is no classical victory right now. Israel should be responsible for the security of those areas and make it impossible for any jihadi group to exploit those territories to launch new mass casualty attacks against the people of Israel. For the time being, it's going to be a security solution and not a political one.
ומסיים עם מסר מחזק לישראל.
Hold the line. America will be back very, very soon. We bless every single one of you, members of the IDF, the family members of people who are in the IDF. Things will change. You are doing the Lord's work by saving innocent people and bringing justice to evildoers. So don't give up. Hold the line, and we will keep you in our prayers.
Decisions for now is the moment for Israel to return to its founding premise. The Jewish state has an absolute right to exist. A divine gift, gifted to a divine nation, charged with a divine purpose. Israel has an absolute and unequivocal right and responsibility to defend itself to the fullest, applying the only language that its adversaries understand, the language of force. So what would David Ben-Gurion say today? He would say, don't depend on anybody else's fleeting sympathies or permission to do it. If Israel and Mossad want to pull off Munich 2.0 and take out every last leader of Hamas, wherever they may be hiding from Doha to Dresden, host a red wedding at the Four Seasons in Qatar, the next time Haniyeh and Mashal show up, they should go ahead and do it. If Israel wants to at long last abandon the myth of a two-state solution, Israel should go ahead and abandon a two-state solution. The rest of the Arab world can absorb Palestinians just as the Jews absorbed their people out of 22 countries they were kicked out of since 1948. The Islamic world cannot continue to condone the slaughtering of Jews while continuing to disown the Palestinians. That is the hard truth.
Of course, that's Ramaswamy, and it was a few years ago when he was running, I believe when he was running in the Republican primary. Just wanted you to hear that he also, and now of course he has a very significant role in the new Trump administration, and even though it's going to be on cutting out government waste, he's not exactly going to be on Middle Eastern affairs at this time. It's good to know that he opposes the so-called two-state solution. And where he stands, it turns out that he's a very strong supporter of Israel.
I will.
Elect Trump with a blunt warning for Hamas.
המסר שיצא אמש מהנשיא הבא של ארצות הברית היה חד משמעי. אם החטופים לא ישוחררו עד שיכנס לחדר הסגלגל, ירדוף את מי שמחזיק אותם, יהיה להם גיהנום.
Tonight, President-elect Trump with a blunt new warning to Hamas, demanding they free the hostages before he takes office in January, or there will be, quote, all hell to pay in the Middle East.
זו אמירה תקיפה מאוד.
Very strong announcement he made.
מבהירה שיש אחראי אחד למצב הזה, וזה...
Part of what is so important about that announcement, not so much the strength of it, that there'll be all hell to pay, but that for the first time you have someone who understands that the freeing of the hostages centrally is on Hamas. Instead of this thing that Israel needs to do a ceasefire and Israel needs to send in humanitarian aid, Israel this, Israel that, genocide, the arrest warrants. For the first time, you have someone pointing the spotlight instead on Hamas, that it's Hamas that needs to release the hostages.
חמאס נדרש לשחרר את החטופים, ואני חושב שהנשיא טראמפ שם את הדגש במקום הנכון.
האיום החד משמעי הוביל אפילו למחאות מצד מי שכיהנו בשנים האחרונות בממשלים דמוקרטיים.
President-elect Trump, he wants the deals done. He's even said it. He wants a ceasefire. So yes, it does help. It helps to have unity of voice in the American leadership across both parties. There is no wiggle room. And it's clear that it's an American priority to get the hostages out.
Who is the greater threat to peace? Let's forget Israel, okay? Who is the greater threat to peace in Syria? ISIS or Israel? Who is the greater threat to peace in Lebanon? Hezbollah or Israel? Who is the greater threat to peace in Egypt? The Muslim Brotherhood or Israel? Do you understand? In every case, everyone in this room would acknowledge that ISIS is a greater threat to peace in Syria than Israel. In every person in this room, I have to believe, even Professor Schlein, would have to agree that ISIS is a greater threat, that the Muslim Brotherhood is a greater threat, and that Hezbollah is a greater threat. All of a sudden, we change the entire scenario because it is now Hamas instead of Hezbollah, or ISIS, or Muslim Brotherhood. What do you think, they're an exception? All of those are monstrous. But Hamas, they're a terrific bunch who really want peace. If it only weren't for settlements. There were no settlements prior to 1967. Why wasn't there peace? Israel would dismantle the settlements for real peace in a moment because the Israeli people are much more interested in sending their kids to college and in having a peaceful life and in making a good living and inventing more medical and technological devices than they are in fighting wars.
The suspect's first court appearance.
You may remember a few weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, there was a shooting of an Orthodox Jew in Chicago.
It's now rescheduled until next week while he recovers in the intensive care unit after being shot multiple times by police during a shootout on Saturday. That gun battle captured on home security video. A shootout is picked up by doorbell video as this alleged gunman brazenly advances toward at least 5 officers while firing shots at them. Police then back away from the gunfire before one officer takes cover behind a porch. We've frozen the video as the suspect turns the corner and is shot multiple times by police, his gun still in his hand. Police say Sidi Mohammed Abdullahi began firing at emergency crews nearly 30 minutes after he shot a Jewish man in the shoulder who was on his way to synagogue Saturday morning in West Rogers Park. The 22-year-old seen here being taken away on a stretcher now faces 14 felony charges, including attempted murder.
We have faith in God, but we are scared.
Jewish leaders today say those charges don't go far enough and are pushing for hate crime charges to be filed.
We urge in the strongest terms possible that CPD and others conduct a thorough investigation into the motives of these heinous crimes and that charges be added as appropriate.
Police Superintendent Larry Snelling says as of now there isn't enough evidence to bring forth hate crime charges. This while Mayor Brandon Johnson saying in a statement in part, quote, all Chicagoans deserve to feel safe and protected across the city.
Suspect in a hate crime shooting in West Rogers Park is dead. The Cook County Sheriff's Office says Sidi Abdullahi was found unresponsive at Cermak Health Services due to an apparent suicide attempt. He was being treated for injury.
So that was a video of 2 weeks ago, and this is what happened this week. An apparent suicide attempt. Apparent.
He received in a shootout with police, captured on surveillance video. This happened after he allegedly shot a Jewish man walking to his synagogue in October.
Watch breaking news on YouTube. Subscribe to ABC7.
The man responsible for the brutal death of Orange County teen Blaze Bernstein will spend the rest of his life behind bars. It was an emotional day in court and a
Newport Beach, California is about a 10-minute drive from where I live in Southern California in Orange County. This kid, Blaze Bernstein, Blaze is actually the name he was given, not a nickname, in high school apparently had a homosexual friendship with a fellow classmate. And then that classmate, after they graduated high school, went off to college. And then at some point for Christmas, a few years ago, Blaze Bernstein communicated with him and said, if you're coming back to town, let's get together. So the guy came back to town and they got together. And the next morning, the body of Blaze Bernstein was found. The fellow killed him and then ran off. And it was ultimately determined to be a hate crime, that the guy who killed him, murdered him actually, not killed, murdered, had during the previous year become a white nationalist Nazi. And Blaze did not know that. And well, that was what happened. So finally, the guy got arrested, was put on trial. And this past week or so, 2 weeks ago, he was sentenced to life imprisonment.
tearful end to a heartbreaking case that gripped Southern California. KTLA Sandra Mitchell was in court for the sentencing of Sam Woodward.
Stabbed in the face, stabbed in his kind blue eyes that could see things most can't see, stabbed in his warm hands that penned beautiful poems and stories, held my hand as a boy, and created so many wonderful things.
Sobbing in a Santa Ana courtroom as the mother of murder victim Blaze Bernstein urged the judge to sentence her son's killer to life without the possibility of parole.
Let's be clear, this was a hate crime.
A chaotic day as convicted killer 27-year-old Samuel Woodward refused to leave his jail cell for sentencing. After hours of delay, the judge ordered the proceedings to go on without the defendant, saying the Bernstein family had suffered long enough. Woodward was convicted of stabbing Bernstein 28 times, leaving his body in a Lake Forest park. Bernstein, an Ivy League student, was briefly back in Southern California visiting his family on winter break when he was killed. Prosecutors argued Woodward searched a dating app to find someone who was Jewish and gay to kill. The jury determined it was a hate crime, and today the judge agreed, sentencing Woodward to life without the possibility of parole.
There is no place for hate in this world. And if you're someone out there that is resentful of another race or sexual preference, there's got to be another way for you to be able to find some love or some way to embrace people who are different than you.
Sandra Mitchell, KTLA 5 News.
Second Cup has closed its franchise at Montreal's Jewish General Hospital after the franchisee was filmed at a protest appearing to make anti-Semitic remarks and gestures.
Second Cup apparently is some kind of coffee chain, like a small version of Starbucks. And they had a particular store or a particular place among the different places around Canada in a hospital. And the manager of that store, as the reporter is pointing out, was revealed to be an anti-Semite. Well, let's leave it to the story.
Second Cup has closed its franchise at Montreal's Jewish General Hospital after the franchisee was filmed at a protest appearing.
So you got that, the Jew hater, who was the manager of the coffee shop inside the Jewish hospital,
to make anti-Semitic remarks and gestures. CTV's Stéphane Giroux has more and a warning. The following video may be disturbing to some.
Final solution is coming your way.
During a pro-Palestinian protest outside of Concordia on Thursday, a woman is heard and seen making anti-Semitic remarks. It's a reference to the Nazi-era call for the extermination of the Jewish people. Later on, it appears the same woman is seen making the Nazi salute. For some Jewish organization like B'nai B'rith, that alone should have been considered a hate crime.
We have a federal government, we have a municipal government that allows hate to fester, manifest itself, is picked up on TV, it's picked up on radio.
Federation CJA was further stunned to find out that that person is a businesswoman who owns this franchise of Second Cup inside the Jewish General Hospital.
To have to engage in that kind of hostile and anti-Semitic rhetoric is unacceptable.
On Saturday, Foodtastic, the parent company of Second Cup, closed the cafe, saying it has zero tolerance for hate speech. Peter Mamis, who is the president, told CTV News that several employees identified the woman in the video as the franchise owner as Mai Abdul Hadi. Jewish community groups applaud the quick action.
In a poetic fashion, one should never bite the hand of those who feed you.
Groups that have supported various pro-Palestinian protests say the woman's behavior doesn't reflect their values.
Anti-Semitism is a real serious problem, and we stand firmly against anti-Semitism and all forms of racism.
CTV News has been unable to reach Abdullah Hadi. Her social media accounts have been disabled. Stéphane Giroux, CTV News.
Okay, we're now moving towards the last part of today's program, and wanted to share some fun and beautiful things with you, also from the past week or two. This lady is converting to Judaism. She's in the Israeli army, and this is the last moments. She's already been to mikveh and all of that, and now she's declaring Shema Yisrael. This is another Israeli border police woman converting to Judaism.
Breaking barriers both on and off the field, BYU's first Jewish quarterback, Jake Retzlaff, has become a trailblazer for more than just his football skills. In an unprecedented move, Manischewitz, a household name in kosher food, has stepped up to sponsor Retzlaff, making history as the first BYU athlete to secure a kosher food brand endorsement. This partnership is a meaningful milestone, blending sports, tradition, and community. Retzlaff, who has openly embraced his Jewish identity, joined BYU, a university with a strong Mormon foundation, showcasing diversity in action. His success on the field and his cultural pride have made him an inspiration to many. The partnership highlights the growing acceptance and celebration of cultural diversity in sports. As Retzlaff continues to make waves at BYU, his journey serves as a reminder that athletes can honor their heritage while excelling in their careers.
Again, BYU is Brigham Young University. It's like 99% Mormon. There are 3 Jews in the whole university, and he's their starting quarterback. This is, as we're closing, we have this and some Shlomo Carlebach. This is how Israel, this is the news that's being reported in Israel about the changing of the guard. This is what Israelis, many of you are in Israel watching, and those of us in America, we know what we're watching here in America. And it's interesting to see what they pick up on Israeli TV with the changing of the guard.
אולי שכחנו, אבל בבית הלבן עוד יושב הנשיא ג'ו ביידן.
Maybe, the reporter says, maybe we've forgotten by now, but Biden is still the president, and he's speaking.
I believe we can be proud we're leaving America in a better place today than we came into office 4 years ago.
הלילה בארוחת ערב חגיגית עם עובדי לשכתו ותומכי עבודה, הנשיא היוצא לעם האמריקאי על 4 שנים בתפקיד.
Serving as president of the United States has been the honor of my life.
הוא גם לא שכח להזיל דמעה.
And the reporter notes that he had tears. He showed some tears and emotion.
בינתיים דרומה משם בפלורידה.
And meanwhile, on the other side of the country, in southern Florida,
יש מי שכבר ממהר להרכיב את הממשל.
There's someone else who's busy forming his government.
President-elect Donald Trump is putting the finishing touches on his cabinet nominations, having chosen nearly a dozen to round out his incoming administration.
פחות מחודש חלף מאז הבחירות, ובמהירות שיא, טראמפ קרוב להשלמת כל כברת הממשל הבא, שיהיה מגוון משציפו. יותר נשים, יותר מיעוטים, ואפילו נציגות לצד הדמוקרטי.
Reporting that Trump's cabinet has more women, more minorities, and even some from the Democrat side, than anybody's ever seen before.
ברשת פוקס מתחילים להבין שאולי זה לא יהיה הממשל הכי שמרני, לא ציפו.
So the reporter in Israel is saying that Fox News is reporting that the cabinet reflects it may be less conservative than the overwhelmingly dominant conservative image than initially had been thought.
The president-elect is filling his cabinet in near record time. It's a very stark difference from what happened last time when he was set to take office.
Hello, Patriots. עוד הפתעה למבקריו ותומכיו של טראמפ מגיעה מזירת החוץ, כשהמיועד ליועץ לביטחון לאומי מעניק תמיכה לממשל ביידן.
The reporter says it's interesting, you should understand, again talking to Israelis, that you should understand that the Trump people are talking respectfully about Biden and are saying that we're just going to continue policies. They're leaving with a, maybe unlike the way it is in Israel, that there's a more elegant kind of transition.
Adversaries out there that think this is a time of opportunity, that they can play one administration off the other. They're wrong. And we are hand in glove. We are one team.
ונראה שהתנהלות טראמפ מאז הניצחון משתלמת לו. סקר רשת CBS מגלה כי...
He's reporting to Israelis that CBS did a poll, and shockingly, Trump has now become popular. When people were asked, what do you think about Trump and his government, 59%, this is CBS, that 59% were positive, 41% negative.
כמעט 60% מהאמריקאים מרוצים מהרכב הממשל המסתמן. אחוז דומה מהאמריקאים, רפובליקנים ודמוקרטים גם יחד, מגלים תמיכה של 57% בתוכנית הדגל של הממשל הבא, גירוש המוני של מהגרים בלתי חוקיים.
And on a poll that was asking, how do you feel about Trump's positions on expelling illegal aliens, 57% found they were in favor, 43% negative. Again, this was conducted by CBS, which is known not to be pro-Trump. And then he's concluding his report by saying, as a reflection of Trump's new popularity, a new dance is breaking out across America, the Trump dance.
ומול נתונים כאלה, איך אפשר שלא לרקוד? והריקוד הזה לצלילי YMCA כובש את הרשת.
It's all over social media and in various venues and platforms.
ממגרשי הפוטבול.
It's taken over football, it's taken over boxing.
זירת ה-UFC. עולם התעופה.
Taken over flight attendants, even marriages.
ואפילו חתונות. אמריקה, או לפחות זו שהצביעה על המועמד הרפובליקני, חוגגת ולא יכולה לחכות עוד פחות מ-60 ימים לכניסת טראמפ לבית הלבן.
said, young man, pick yourself up around.
As you can see, the world is crazy.
Pick yourself up around.
All right, let's get this right. Okay. We close with two songs I mentioned. This is the month of Shlomo Carlebach's Yahrzeit, and I found two more short clips where the program is over except for this. This is Shlomo Carlebach in 1962. I'd never seen, this is like, what, more than 60 years ago, a much younger Shlomo Carlebach, and I never knew that at the beginning of his career, he began by just doing shows for children. By the end of his life, he was the biggest singer of Jewish music in the world, and he'd become a legend. But he started off by going to yeshivas and doing programs for little kids, for young kids. And I have two pieces, and we'll close with that, two songs. Eight years later in France, and with this we close.
Okay. Aleman achai v'rei, Aleman achai v'rei, Adabrana, Adabrana, Shah.